In the early hours of a Los Angeles morning, the world did not lose Catherine O'Hara, but many fans were reminded of how vulnerable even the most beloved icons can be. Rumors, misreports, and dramatic headlines briefly blurred the line between fiction and reality, forcing people to pause and confront an uncomfortable truth. We often imagine our favorite artists as permanent fixtures in our lives. Catherine O'Hara has spent decades radiating vitality, wit, and emotional warmth, so the idea of her absence felt jarring, even hypothetical. That moment of collective fear revealed something important. It showed how deeply her presence is woven into our sense of comfort and continuity. Long before awards, accolades, or cultural impact, she became someone audiences trusted. This story is not about loss, illness, or endings, but about why the thought of losing her resonated so strongly. It is about understanding the human being behind the laughter and why her work feels inseparable from our own memories of safety, humor, and home. Built differently, seeing the world the sideways, Catherine O'Hara has always stood slightly apart from the crowd, and in a poetic twist, that difference extends beyond performance into biology. She was born with situs inversus, a rare condition in which the body's internal organs are mirrored, including a heart that beats on the right side instead of the left. While this condition has never defined her career, it feels symbolically fitting for a woman who has always approached comedy from unexpected angles. She sees humor where others see chaos, tenderness where others expect exaggeration. That mirrored anatomy becomes a quiet metaphor for her artistry. She never followed straight lines to punchlines. Instead, she curved, paused, and surprised. From early improvisation to iconic film roles, her comedy has always felt slightly off-center in the best possible way. She made audiences laugh not by pushing jokes at them, but by revealing emotional truth through eccentricity. Being different was never something she explained. It was simply how she existed, both on and off screen, learning to be heard in a noisy world. Growing up in a large Catholic family in Toronto, Catherine O'Hara learned early that silence rarely won attention. With 6 siblings around the table, humor became a form of survival, not performance. If you wanted to be heard, you needed timing, wit, and confidence. That environment sharpened her instincts long before she ever stepped on a stage. When she entered the world of improvisation at Second City in the 1970s, she arrived prepared for intensity. The space was competitive, fast-moving, and dominated by strong personalities. Yet she never tried to overpower the room. Instead, she listened carefully, then slipped into character so fully that the room leaned toward her. Working alongside future legends like John Candy and Eugene Levy, she established herself not as an exception, but as an equal. Her strength was transformation. She didn't demand attention. She earned it by disappearing into roles so completely that audiences forgot the performer and remembered only the character, becoming a permanent part of our holidays. When Home Alone arrived in 1990, Catherine O'Hara unknowingly secured a permanent place in global tradition. Her portrayal of a frantic, loving, imperfect mother struck a universal chord. That airport scream of Kevin was not just comedic timing. It was raw parental fear wrapped in humor, and audiences recognized it instantly. Year after year, her performance returns to living rooms around the world, carrying nostalgia, warmth, and reassurance. She didn't play a flawless parent. She played a human one, distracted, loving, and deeply devoted. That authenticity is why the character never aged out of relevance. For many viewers, her presence became synonymous with the holidays themselves. Comfort, chaos, laughter, and resolution all lived in her performance. Yet while audiences embraced the familiarity, Catherine never coasted on it. She treated the role with the same seriousness she brought to every project, aware that comedy works best when grounded in emotional truth rather than exaggerated cleverness. The perfectionist behind the laughter Despite her effortless screen presence, Catherine O'Hara has long been known as a meticulous perfectionist. Comedy for her was never casual. Every inflection, pause, and expression mattered. Colleagues often describe her as deeply prepared and quietly nervous, even after decades of success. She never assumed she had it figured out. That humility, sometimes bordering on self-doubt, pushed her to work harder than most. She didn't chase attention or celebrity, she chased accuracy. Humor, in her view, was a precise instrument that could easily fail if mishandled. This mindset explains why her performances feel so controlled yet alive. She allowed chaos to exist inside clearly defined boundaries. Audiences laughed freely because she had already done the careful work. That internal pressure rarely showed on screen, but it shaped everything she delivered. She wasn't trying to be memorable, she was trying to be honest, and that honesty became her signature. Reinvention without losing the core. When Schitt's Creek introduced Moira Rose, Catherine O'Hara demonstrated something rare in entertainment: reinvention without erasure. The character was flamboyant, theatrical, and absurd on the surface, yet deeply human underneath. With her unplaceable accent and dramatic vocabulary, Moira could have easily become a caricature. Instead, Catherine grounded her in vulnerability, pride, and longing. The result was a cultural phenomenon that reached audiences across generations. Winning awards in her 60s was not just a career milestone. It was proof that artistic growth has no expiration date. She didn't abandon her roots in subtle comedy. She expanded them. Moira Rose worked because Catherine treated her with sincerity, not irony. Viewers laughed at the extravagance, then stayed for the emotional honesty. This phase of her career reminded the industry that longevity is not about relevance alone, but about integrity. She evolved without ever betraying the core of who she was as a performer, carrying grief without making noise. Behind the steady success, Catherine O'Hara's life has included profound personal losses that she rarely discussed publicly. As part of a close-knit generation of comedians, she witnessed the early passing of friends and collaborators who shaped her creative world. The loss of John Candy, in particular, left a lasting mark. Rather than turning grief into spectacle, she carried it quietly, continuing to work, support others, and honor her relationships through consistency rather than confession. This approach became part of her identity. She did not believe pain needed an audience to be real. That restraint is increasingly rare in an industry that rewards oversharing. Yet it allowed her to maintain balance and dignity. Her resilience did not come from denial, but from acceptance. She understood that joy and sorrow often coexist, and that laughter can be an offering even when life feels heavy. That understanding infused her work with depth. Audiences could feel, even if they never knew why. Choosing privacy in a public industry, in a culture driven by exposure, Catherine O'Hara has always guarded her private life with intention. She built a small, stable inner circle and prioritized family over constant visibility. This choice sometimes puzzled observers who expected more appearances, more interviews, more access. But her absence was never disengagement. It was preservation. She understood that creativity requires space, and that constant performance off-screen can drain the work on screen. By resisting the pressure to always be present, she protected her craft and her well-being. This boundary setting allowed her to return when the work truly mattered to her. It also modeled an alternative path in Hollywood, one where longevity is supported by restraint rather than overexposure. Her career is not defined by scandals or public battles, but by steadiness. That quiet consistency may be one of her greatest achievements, proving that success does not require surrendering one's inner life. Gratitude for a presence that still endures. Catherine O'Hara's story is not about endings, but about appreciation. It reminds us to recognize the humanity behind the performances we love, while those artists are still here to be celebrated. Her heart, famously beating on the right side, feels like a fitting symbol for a woman whose emotional compass has always pointed toward empathy, generosity, and care. She has given audiences laughter that softened difficult moments and characters that felt like family. Rather than asking how long such brilliance will last, perhaps the better question is how deeply it has already shaped us. Her work continues to echo, not because it is loud, but because it is sincere. Catherine O'Hara does not need myth-making or dramatic narratives to validate her legacy. It already lives in shared laughter, familiar scenes, and the quiet comfort of knowing that some artists truly understand the human condition. For that, gratitude feels like the only appropriate response.